So the economists are pushing for a $8,000 fourth stimulus check, everybody. This will be a one-time inflation relief check, and these checks could be automatically deposited to eligible households and Americans that receive the monthly benefit checks. So, for instance, New Mexico is already sending out $400 checks. Another state like Maine is sending out $800 payments. So, everybody, it's pretty good to see that President Biden, Republicans, Democrats, and governors are doing what it takes to send out stimulus payments and help out the American people and send out stimulus checks before it's too late, because President Biden definitely has the authority to do so. We're just waiting on President Biden to take some action. But now, a total of 3 rounds of stimulus checks were deposited into people's bank accounts over the past several years in order to help people and shield people from the devastating effects of the crisis. But the crisis has not stopped affecting millions of people's lives. For instance, Americans will spend thousands of dollars in extra money this year, in part due to the after effects of the crisis. And many are hoping from the federal government that they will take action to help defray the big expenses with another stimulus payment. Since the crisis has led to surging inflation, which has impacted many families and senior citizens. Factors that are causing inflation to be at a 40-year high. Crisis-related supply chain disruptions and increased demand for goods and services, and following an extended lockdown are 2 of the leading reasons why prices have gone up so much this year. The U.S. Congress actually said that in a report they showed that how much prices have risen for the typical household, and the numbers are not good. It's bad, everybody. According to the data, even if prices stop going up for the rest of the year, the inflation that has already been happening means that the average American household has already paid around $10,000 more in the past 12 months for these overpriced goods. That's a huge sum of money, and it's the money that most people cannot even afford, especially if their jobs are disrupted or stagnant. And with Americans out of so much cash, many people believe the federal government should step up to provide checks that would cover these costs and losses. According to some economists, if lawmakers wanted to even out the cost for Americans, they would need to send out $8,000 relief checks. Other economists say that even higher payments might need to be sent. If prices continue going up instead of remaining stagnant through the remainder of 2022, something has to be done. People can relief packages have also been provided for thousands of families, and the good news is that many states are recognizing that inflation has been detrimental, and they're sending out money to help residents cope with this. So while the payments being sent are smaller than the $8,000 checks, at least those in states that are offering aid will get some support to cover the huge extra expenses in inflation and it's causing families to incur some difficulties. So, according to New Mexico, for example, low-income households in New Mexico have less than a week to apply for a fourth stimulus check worth at least $400. And the latest stimulus checks are being administered by the New Mexico Human Services Department. Its state is accepting applications until 5 p.m. on October 7th, and the fourth check is also intended for low-income households. A spokesperson said that depending on the number of eligible applicants, the funds can be distributed accordingly, and our hope is that we get a good amount of applications in so we can serve them and help out the people that need the checks the most. So it's good to see that some states are actually doing some good action and sending out stimulus payments. Good to know. So here, everybody, this is what I need you to know. New Mexico's Department of Finance and Administration is actually starting to send payments also to approved applicants, that is, before the end of November, and applicants who are chosen for this payment will be informed by their confirmation. So state officials, for instance, will also prioritize homes with the lowest incomes. However, the officials have not clarified which households as low income do not have a setting maximum income for this eligibility payment. Now, Maine residents may be eligible to receive up to $850 in crisis relief checks thanks to a surplus in the state budget and offering some financial assistance to address inflation-induced economic strains. About 858,000 Mainers will be eligible for relief check so long as they fill the necessary paperwork just to claim the payment by the end of this month. So to qualify, applicants must be a full-year resident and file their last year's return by the end of this month as well. So people are actually getting stimulus payments, and stimulus checks are being sent out.
Or OPM develops and administers human capital policies for the federal workforce and functions as the bedrock of our nation's personnel and management efforts across the executive branch, while the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, also known as OIRA, serves as the central authority for the review and coordination of federal regulations. Mr. Shriver, if confirmed, you will be OPM's Deputy Director charged with setting the policies for more than 1.8 million dedicated public servants, which will require agency leadership that can build confidence in OPM. OPM and maintain a nonpartisan, merit-based workforce that serves every American. The Deputy Chief Human Resources Officer is a significant undertaking, and I believe your extensive experience in public service, including current and prior experience at OPM, will help you provide an innovative vision for the future of the federal workforce. Likewise, OIRA Administrator is an incredibly important position. Mr. Revez, if confirmed, you will lead 6 subject matter branches and be responsible for ensuring the office provides transparency into regulatory decisions and promotes public participation in the rulemaking process. Your long history of both academic and legal analysis on the modernization of the regulatory process, improving cost-benefit analysis, and ensuring greater transparency and participation in the rulemaking process will certainly serve the office well. While OIRA is a small, relatively unknown office in the federal government, it actually manages federal rules and regulations that impact Americans' daily lives in a number of different ways. The decisions that your agency will make can affect everything from repairing roads and bridges, funding K-12 schools, and protecting air and drinking water. People in Michigan and across the country depend on OIRA to work with federal agencies to efficiently and effectively implement important safeguards that will protect the health and safety of all Americans. And while few folks outside of Washington are familiar with OIRA, they know all too well how delayed regulatory impacts can affect their lives. For too long, essential safeguards for lead in drinking water and PFAS substances, toxic chemicals that are widely used in industry and consumer products, remain stalled in the regulatory review process. Despite federal agencies promising to take a more proactive approach to address this crisis, Michiganders in communities like Flint, Oscoda, and Parchment in my home state cannot drink the water from their own faucets without fearing the ingestion of toxins from lead as well as PFAS. And while regulations are the responsibility of federal agencies, they must be reviewed before they can be adopted. And that's why, as chairman of the Senate's Top Oversight Committee, I know it is critical that lawmakers pursue regulatory reforms that reduce duplicative or burdensome processes while maintaining important protections.
The IRS Commissioner Chuck Reddick told lawmakers that before filing season even began, the IRS predicted that returns would be delayed this year, but the backlog should be cleaned before the end of the year. Taxpayers can track the status of the tax refunds using the IRS Where's My Refund tool. In the past, this tool could only be used to track the current tax year, but it was recently upgraded so that users can track this year's and the previous 2 years' refund. The IRS paid out $3.3 billion in interest to taxpayers in fiscal year 2021. That's triple the interest the agency paid in 2015. And President Biden conceded this week that he didn't understand how big of an effect the shutdown of baby formula and recalls would have on the baby formula supply chain until April. His admission came moments after formula manufacturers told him during a White House roundtable that they knew immediately how bad the shortages could get. The White House has previously said it had been working on addressing the shortages since February. And Biden responding to questions about how quickly the administration acted, claimed, "I don't think anybody anticipated the impact of the facility. Once we learned the extent of it and how broad it was, we kicked everything into gear." The National Economic Council director worked to explain later how the situation had devolved into the current crisis. In speaking on CNN, Brian Deese faulted the supply chain as too sluggish in coming to an agreement with the government on steps to reopen the plant, citing the delay as exacerbating the situation. The top advisor said that Biden had been informed of the looming problem once it became clear, even though the other officials inside the White House had worked on the issue earlier. The IRS is actually taking some big action to help taxpayers across the country. Democrats are criticizing President Biden for not taking enough action to help the American people. Many lawmakers in Congress are pushing the Biden administration to take immediate action on inflation. And according to Democratic Representative Ro Khanna, Joe Biden can do more to fight inflation and needs to take action soon. Ro Khanna criticized Biden on inflation during an interview with the New York Times. He argued that the president's solutions to inflation are not good enough. Khanna stated, "I support the president's effort, but we need a bolder vision and faster action. To meet the moment, Biden should convene an emergency task force empowered to lower prices and address shortages." Representative Khanna went on to say that Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and many others comprise the task force, along with representatives of state and local governments and business leaders. Khanna argues that a task force could actually lower prices by purchasing food and fuel during global price dips and reselling it cheaply to Americans. Biden laid out his three-point plan to address inflation. The plan largely called on the Federal Reserve and Congress to handle the issue. However, there is little executive action on Biden's part. The plan shows limits on what the U.S. presidents can do to address economic issues like inflation. Everybody, the U.S. economy recorded its strongest growth in nearly 4 decades, fueled by trillions of dollars in government stimulus and easy monetary policies that kept borrowing costs near zero. While the crisis relief efforts helped keep in households and helped to bring unemployment from a high of 15% down to 3.6% in just 2 years, it also fueled rapid consumer demand that was exacerbated already sky-high inflation. A Labor Department report last month showed the consumer price index jumped 8.3% in April, underscoring that inflationary pressures in the economy remain very strong. On top of that, gas prices hit another record high, with a gallon of gas on average now costing $4.71. That is up 40% from just 1 year ago. The IRS is now putting authority from Congress to fast-track new hires to good use. The IRS announced this week that it's looking to hire more than 4,000 representatives at several agencies across the country. Now, these contact representatives assist taxpayers over the phone. The IRS will hire these employees through its direct hire authority, which will allow it to bring new employees on board within 40 to 45 days, rather than waiting several months. The agency received direct hire authority from Congress in the 2022 spending bill from President Biden in March.
Tuition-free community college. Is there a concerted effort in part of this to try to help that kind of education for communities that have been underserved over the years?
I think the point here is with the total $8 million that were delivered through the community project funding, and the one specifically focused on higher education, is that I see it as a public good, and we should invest in it accordingly. And